friends. This is John, your host of Dairyland Frights. And make sure, wherever you listen to Dairyland Frights, to rate and subscribe us. Give us 5 stars. We truly appreciate it. And make sure you give us a review so we can see how we can improve the show, make it better, and stay spooky.
Welcome to Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest and beyond. And folks, you're in for a real treat today. I found her on Instagram, and I'm glad I did because I saw her content, absolutely fell in love with it. She's from the UK, and I'm so excited about having my UK friends on because they have such great stories and they make our haunted houses and pubs and bars look like a joke, but that's okay. I love it. So my guest today is Cherrell, author and paranormal historian. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me. What a lovely introduction. I feel like I've got a lot to live up to now.
No, by the way, she's super smart. She's a doctor too, but she told me, that's okay. You can call me Kate. So she's modest too, folks. So on top of it. So what I want to talk today is about first things. Let's talk about, you're an author and you have a new book coming out, which I saw, which I have to put on my reading list because it looks fascinating. Can you tell my spooky friends a little bit first about you? And then how about your book? Talk a little bit about that. And I think they would love to check that out.
Okay, well, I'm Kate. I'm better known as a paranormal historian. So I spend my life surrounded by books and old tales of spiritualists and hauntings. So day to day, I write for magazines and for various publishing companies around the world on matters of the paranormal. I do consultancy for different media projects. I have appeared on various TV projects as a paranormal historian, as a paranormal investigator, various types of experts. So I've investigated all manner of weird and wonderful places, and I'm very fortunate to have done so. And so I channel all of these interests that are both personal and academic into my public writings. If you just want a little snippet of what I do, I've been running a blog called Burials and Beyond for the last 10 years, which seems far too long. But I've been running that. I know. And it's all about, I say, graves, ghouls, folklore, everything in between. I'm a perpetually nosy person. So if I see a plaque somewhere on a building, I am stopping my day to go and snoop. If there's a haunted pub, I legally have to go and have a glass of wine and see if it's haunted. It's all tax deductible if you squint hard enough.
There you go.
So my books, at the minute, my debut novel is called Begotten, and it's a slow-burning Gothic novel based around the possibilities of spiritualism and the possibilities of deception in the 19th century. And I made this sort of neo-Gothic novel about whether or not you can ever truly trust your senses, and framed it within the realm of very dramatic Victorian seances, which was a lot of fun. And that came out last year. And so, if you're into slow-burning Gothics, get that on your reading list.
Yes.
But the one that's coming out in a matter of weeks is one that came from the old blog. So I've been visiting graveyards, cemeteries, burial spaces since I was a incredibly odd child. I own that. I'm very proud of it. And so I've always held this interest in not only the people beneath the ground, but the stories that have sprung up around graves, and also the ways in which we memorialise people, the ways in which we decorate graves. And a little while ago, I had this idea of, I've spent half my life going round English graveyards. Why don't I put together this kind of photographic journey through England's most unusual graves? So I've got everything from witch graves to pyramids to all manner of weird and wonderful resting places. And they're all in one handy-dandy book called Memorials to the Dead, which, like I say, is out imminently.
Nice. I love it. So you brought up something I wanted to ask you. You said you were the odd kid. Was that you had glasses and you were kind of like nerdy, as we would call in the States, or and just like maybe you would ride your bike past the graveyard and be like, I got to check this out. Were you like that, or was it something else?
There was nothing cool about my existence at all as a child. And I think I came into the world being incredibly bizarre. And I'm very fortunate that I've been able to turn it into a career in adulthood. But certainly as a kid, didn't have glasses until I was about 12. So I had about 12 solid years of just being odd with varying levels of eyesight. But prior to that, if there was anything, I was always the kid stashing up Goosebumps books, writing her own weird stories. I would go to the local cemetery twice a week, every week, on a Tuesday and Thursday. When my granddad, who just lived up the road, we'd walk together, do a lap of the cemetery, go down the seafront and back up. So it just became normal. And my that same granddad was very much into the paranormal, the unexplained. He was big into Roswell as well, so he had his teeny tiny little supernatural library, and he would sit me on his knee before I could even read and would show me like the glossy pages of these paranormal encyclopedias. And I'd see all like the different cryptids and pictures from seances through to images from the Roswell crash. And it just became so normal for me that I couldn't understand that other kids weren't going home and making little UFO replicas, or why they weren't trying to write their own little gothic horror novels, why they weren't drawing headstones. And so it really did set me aside for many years. And I think being partially raised by grandparents shifted my frame of reference back by about 50 years plus. So I did carry that with me when my grandparents had to break it so slowly to me and gently that Charlie Chaplin died.
Yeah.
Before I was born, because as a kid, I just thought everyone loves Chaplin, everyone loves Buster Keaton, everyone loves going around cemeteries. And so they slowly through my life had to go, you do know you're the only one that's doing this in your age group at the minute. So it's been a good geekiness. It's a geekiness that's been very good to me.
I love that, Kate. See, that is your non-apologetic, right? I embraced it. Hey, I'm a nerd too. I love nerdy stuff. The paranormal has always been something that's been, and my mom really liked the paranormal too, and she would talk to me about it. And I think that's the biggest difference between people like us who love the paranormal is usually at a young age, you were the one checking out the ghost book at the library, right? And the librarian would look at you and you'd be like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm not going to have nightmares. This is good. I'm fine. And they kind of give you a little bit of side eye look like, you're 9 years old and you're checking out paranormal books? Okay. All right. When you're supposed to be checking out maybe I don't know, teenage drama books or something. That's how nerdy I am. I don't even know what to check out.
Yeah. God bless libraries. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so then tell me, when was your first paranormal experience and what happened?
Well, that is very much... Goodness, how to condense that? Well, for a few my sister, when I was, 12, moved into a new house. And that house, to summarise a very, very, very long story, turned out to already have someone or something living in it. So I spent a lot of time living at my sister's, sleeping at my sister's house over this period. And that's when I started experiencing the first paranormal phenomena. I was kind of a child witness, really, or a teenage witness, really, to a lot of what was going on. So it was very early and it was very formative. And it was, when I look back at it, because we were there for 3-4 years, you could play it out like one of those horror films that you end up screaming at the TV about when you go, oh, just believe it. Oh, just leave the house. It's so frustrating when I look back. But my sister bought this house. It was completely normal. It's like a 1950s semi-detached house. And we started stripping the wallpaper and getting everything ripped out pretty quickly because it had been rented out for so many years to so many people before that. We would later find out that previously no tenant had lasted more than 6 months. And that's why the landlord ultimately sold it. Now we think we know why. But as soon as we started changing things in the house, that's when the strangeness started happening. And we started hearing footsteps up and down the staircase, and it was like heavy, purposeful footsteps up and down the stairs and across the landing. And as time went on, relatively quickly, it escalated into seeing these big lights going up and down the stairs, like big slashes of light. They weren't little orbs or anything dainty. It was like a big semicolon or like a big sort of semi-human shape we'd see going up and down the stairs. And it just escalated until you could be sat downstairs and you'd hear someone walking around upstairs. You'd hear banging. And then we eventually started seeing these sort of black shapes, almost like static, moving in and out of rooms. Like, I've always struggled to describe it well over the years, how it started, but it was almost like seeing a part of a person, like a shoulder or an arm at the right height, just shadowy and staticky, going into a room. And eventually we started seeing this full shadow figure. Shadow doesn't seem right either, because it was as real as you or I, it was physical. Yeah. It wasn't 2D. And we started seeing this figure around the house that we just started calling the man. And so we saw him mainly upstairs. He'd do his lap every night. The dog would sit at the top of the stairs and watch the footsteps before we saw who was making them. And then ultimately we started seeing this man in parts, and then finally fully manifested around the house. And we started seeing him in one instance hovering in the corner of the bathroom, which it sounds bizarre, but he was, like hanging in the corner of the shower. And then ultimately he would walk into my bedroom. It was horrific. Yeah. And then he'd walk into my bedroom. I'm convinced it was intelligent. It was someone who was not angry, but curious and confused as to why these people were in his house. And he'd come up to my bed. I could hear breath close to me. God. When I was under the covers, again, like a terrible horror film. But, it's how you deal with these things. And I was told for a very long time before that it's all in your head. You're having nightmares. Mm-hmm. You should really stop reading those Goosebumps books. That was a big one. Whereas R.L. Stein readied me for this. But so everything was blamed on an extreme childish imagination on the dawn of paranormal TV in the UK, that sort of thing. And then eventually my sister and her husband were woken up at the same time one night when they were in bed. And they both sat up, bolt awake, and saw a man standing at the foot of their bed. And they were both awake, and they both confirmed to one another, do you see him? And he was there for about a minute, maybe long. So it wasn't even fleeting. It was there for a decent amount of time before it went, and it all escalated after that. Hell broke loose, and I ended up never sleeping there again. And they ended up taking the mattress downstairs and sleeping in the living room because you just couldn't go upstairs anymore. When I was there, my sister and I had to go up to the bathroom in pairs, because we were too scared to go on our own. Yeah, it was terrible. And then all this time, we were trying to get the house completely redecorated, so to finish the job and get it sold. And luckily, it sold to the first people that looked round it. And they're still there today, as far as I understand. So goodness knows what happened with them. Yeah, it's very odd.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Did you ever, maybe in your later years, Kate, do a little research to figure out who that man could have been, or it was just what you thought a former tenant?
Yeah, we think it was it was a man who lived there before the person that my sister bought the house from. So the person that bought the house that then rented it out had bought it with the intention to live in it with his family, rather. And they lasted, I can't remember how long it was a couple of weeks, and then they left in the middle of the night. But prior to that, it was owned by a man and his mother, and we know that the man was about in his 40s and he died in the bath. And he was very smart, he was always very smart, would always wear these very dapper blue suits that we would ultimately see him in. So I think it was that man who was confused and then, I don't know, sort of built up in some kind of energy over the years. Weirdly enough, after all of that, and like I said, that was 3-4 years, I never connected that with my interest in the paranormal. They both felt like completely separate things. Like, this is the thing I read about, and this is the thing I experienced. And we don't mix them, because then that becomes too real. So it was only really probably about 5 years ago, maybe less, that I even started talking about what happened at my sister's house, because now it feels like it's okay. They've almost been like these communal sort of therapy groups with other people that have experienced haunted houses. And we all sit together and go, it's okay. It's okay. I know we're all weirdos now, but it's okay that these things happened, you know? So yeah, it's a weird process, that.
It's something I think, maybe you've known this through your research and everything. I think more people are coming forward with getting out their stories about the paranormal and everything, which is great because no one's going to think you crazy. But I understand why you might think that, you know, because as a young child, you know, your imagination is pretty, you know, you watch a horror movie, you go to bed and you might see that same monster, dream about it. Could happen. But at the end of the day, when these things are happening on a repeated basis, right, there's something else that should be brought up. And what always makes me kind of laugh, Kate, is I've spoken to other people who have brought up your same story. And then as soon as they leave the house, the parents go, yep, I saw it too. Yeah, you were right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you were like, Mom, Dad, like, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, exactly the same. It was as soon as we'd left, my sister had a very long conversation with my mum saying, oh no, we knew this was happening from the start. We were terrified. This is what was happening in the end. And then when Kate said that she was seeing this, we were so frightened. All the while, they were telling me. I was imagining things. Like I was saying there was a man, horrible, big, scary man in my room. And you were saying, put the light on and go back to sleep. How dare you?
How dare you? But let's be honest. If they came up to you, Kate, be like, Kate, before you go to sleep tonight, just want to let you know, there's a terrible man who is, well, he's kind of like foreboding and kind of angry. Oh, good night, honey.
Yeah. A man made of shadows might glide into your bedroom at midnight. Okay, all right, be ready for school in the morning.
Get ready for school. Yeah, okay, we'll see you. Shut the door, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. Talking to people who have had haunted homes and everything, they vary in their stories, what's scary and everything. I've never lived in one, but I don't know how people can do it. You know what I'm saying? I've spoken to people who have lived there, Kate, 10, 11 years, and they would tell me they would wake up in the morning, the cupboards would be open, all the drawers would be open in the kitchen. Or they would be taking a shower and it felt like somebody was in the shower with them. Or they would go downstairs and somebody would pull their hair. And I'm like, why aren't you leaving? You know? Like, do you understand that from a certain point of view? If financially, I get it. You can't just be like selling stuff and moving. And by the way, the spirits can come with you. It's not like, you know, they can. And I have heard numerous stories where the spirit has followed that person to their next residence.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fascinating to me. That's absolutely fascinating.
I think if someone was living, well, certainly if the people that are living in that house now that have been there for, you know, God knows how many years now, they can't have experienced it. I just can't believe that they would experience even half of what we went through and still be there. So I've heard of cases where people will report extreme poltergeist activity, all manner of hauntings, and then the second that they leave, it stops, you know, or it lasts a few weeks and then never happens again. So I can only presume that it stopped, or maybe the guy tried to follow us. Because in the first night of the new house, the bins started opening and closing, but then nothing else happened after that. So I really don't know. But well, certainly in the case of my sister, it was the financial aspect that stopped us from moving. So I think, if you've got the ability to move and then you wake up in the morning going, oh God, the poltergeist has branded me again and broken all my possessions. What? Get out. You can get a much nicer house with, you know, aircon and no ghosts. Do that. Do that instead.
Exactly. And, you know, I couldn't last 5 minutes, to be honest with you. I think it would be too much for me to deal with that on a daily basis, right? To wake up every morning and have that person there or shadow or whatever you want to say, that'd be tough. I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah, certainly
I don't
hearing
know.
the footsteps every night, and it was every night. It didn't get any less frightening. To me, I got that fear every night that you feel in your chest when it's almost
Yes.
like your breath just keeps escaping you because you know it's going to happen. And then when it does, it's like, is this the day that he's going to come downstairs? And
Yeah.
God knows what, it was, it was horrible.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this before we move on to graveyards and everything. I'm really curious. I want your opinion. I always ask people in the UK this. One of your most famous cases, the Enfield Poltergeist.
Yes.
What is your feeling upon it? Fake? Real?
I mean, yeah, that's a contentious one, isn't it? Well,
It is.
Personally, I think there's something in it. I think it was real to some capacity, but that doesn't mean that it was completely free from deception. I think that so many of these famous hauntings or poltergeist cases are built on truth and are built on true experiences. But then when you start getting people involved, whether that's media, whether that's investigators or the SPR in the case of Enfield, there is that compulsion or perceived need to perform, to validate your experiences, because there's nothing worse than having these horrific experiences and then someone come in and go, well, didn't happen when I was here, so you're talking out your backside. So I think there was a certain element of that with Enfield, because years ago, this is one hell of a tenuous link, I dated someone whose parents were in the Met at the time of Enfield. And while they didn't investigate Enfield, they were colleagues with the people that did, and they knew them very well. And I heard quite a lot from them. Obviously, if someone said, oh yeah, no, my mum was mates with the woman that went to Enfield when they called the police, it's like, your mother's going to tell me everything. It was very, very much that sort of situation.
Love it.
And she said, that woman was so prim and proper and unbothered by everything. But when she came back from Enfield, she was a wreck. She was terrified and she was convinced that it was real. And I feel it's little tiny anecdotal things like that I think help give cases like Enfield legitimacy, certainly to myself. But yeah, I think Enfield, like so many of the big ones, is a bit of a mess of truths and half-truths and fraud. And you've kind of got to put it through a big spectral sieve to find the truth.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, not to go on a tangent here, but here we go. Like the Black Monk of Pontefract, that is real to this day, where you can go to this, I believe it's a flat, if I remember correctly.
House. Yeah, it's a
house. It's a house.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. And you can go there. I've spoken again to some of my great friends in the UK who have gone there, who've had varied experiences. Have you gone there? Have you heard of something? Would you like to go there?
I have been there.
Okay.
And I have no grand stories to tell of it, I'm afraid. But of people that I do know, I've known so many people have very different relationships with East Drive, from seeing it as like a backdrop to a parody film, through to people that have felt like they've wasted their evening, to people that feel like they've had the most amazing paranormal experiences of their life there. And I feel like with Pontefract, with East Drive, it's such, once again, I feel like a broken record. It's such a mess to untangle fact from fiction, certainly relating to historical record, because a lot of the stories about the monk are based on interpretations of historical record, dating back to, basically where there are supposed to be monks and where there are supposed to be monasteries, they simply weren't there. Whereas, people may argue till they're blue in the face that these things have travelled from elsewhere, or that spirits have travelled from elsewhere.
Right.
But it's deeply historically contentious, but that doesn't mean that, the experiences there in the first place weren't real. I think if you want to get a load of paranormal investigators fighting in between themselves, you put them in a pub, get them well oiled up and say, so, Black Monk, real, fake, go. And before you know it, there will be blood. It's such a hot topic. I think as well because East Drive is hireable. You can hire the house yourself, and it's not cheap. And you can, or that you can just book onto organised investigations. I think when you start getting higher costs and things like that coming, like the kind of commercialisation, that's when people have got a far greater axe to grind than they would have done otherwise. So yeah, I think the jury's out with Pontefract, but I think a lot of the histories need to be revisited with maybe a little more academic rigor.
Sure.
And I don't think it would take anything away from the hauntings at all, but it might open up new avenues. You never know.
Exactly. And you never know with each individual location and everything what they possess. Like in America, the biggest thing right now is the Conjuring House. There's a lot of going back and forth and so on and so forth about what's happening. And there's been numerous owners with it and fights and just, people saying that it was totally made up, to people saying, no, it's real, to it. So that's in America, that's where you get people well oiled up and blood would flow too. You say, okay, Conjuring House, people would get pretty out there because, we've had, as you know, the Conjuring series who's out there, which again, it's Hollywood. They need people. So, and the Warrens are a whole different thing. That's a whole different podcast. The Warrens are in America are love-hate relationship with them.
Yeah.
It's some people are on the fence. Other people they're frauds. Other people are like, that's true. Other people, again, I guess it's up to your interpretation, but there should have been more, to your point, more academia. Like, let's take this from a scientific view. I know that's not as fun as walking in and trying to get EVPs and hey, scare me, but actually taking readings, actually, looking at different things of the house, looking at the wood, looking at the soil, looking at the everything, trying to determine like, oh, is it because of this? Is it because of that? They're hallucinated because, I don't know, there's something in the air. I don't know. Right. I'm just spitballing here, just trying to put it out there.
Yeah.
And that happens, right? To a lot of places where people say, I'm seeing a ghost. And you're like, well, you're not. And this is why, because your plumbing stinks and you've got to redo your plumbing. That's why you hear bumping in the night, is because your pipes are about to explode, right? Something like that. That's simple, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's a necessary evil. It feels like a necessary evil in the world of the paranormal, is that you need to do your best to debunk any claims, especially grand claims, because it's an integral part of trying to find the stuff that you genuinely can't explain. That's where the good stuff is. So, yeah, absolutely. If you're, and I think the same would apply looking into historical cases, looking at cases from the Warrens, looking at cases from, Peter Underwood, in the UK, people like that, where they are held up as these amazing icons, and quite rightly. They forwarding the paranormal field doesn't have to come with great, half a dozen letters after your name and 1,000,001 publications. It can just come with popularization and development of different theories. And I certainly think, though, if we look back at a lot of historic cases like Enfield, like the Conjuring House, like the Villisca axe murder house, things like that, I think we can so often, as paranormal enthusiasts, fall into this routine of seeing things as a matter of, I want to go in with a REM pod, I want to get a scare, I'm going to contact this ghost that the man on the door said would come out and chat to me, and then I'm going to go and put it on the internet, and I'm going to get lots of likes, and I'm going to feel like I've had a fulfilling moment. And that fulfilling moment is great. I think that's what most paranormal investigators should be looking for, is that personal development. But on the other side of things as well, I think your enjoyment of the paranormal and your understanding of social and cultural history surrounding the paranormal can deepen so much more if you go and just go and find the primary texts, because more often than not, they'll be available online. So many archives are digitized nowadays, and see what those statements are. But then look at the surrounding area. What was the culture of the time? What was the local folklore of the time? Who said this was an absolute first? And then the more you do that, the more things start to untangle, and the more you can enjoy your own experiences, but also feel like, this is where I fit into the great paranormal jigsaw of this space, because I've been influenced by this. I'm bringing this into the space, but I'm building on the great tradition from all of these people. So I don't necessarily think that scientific exploration of sites has to be the be all and end all. There's so much more waiting for all of us.
Right.
Does that make sense? That seems like I was just a word salad, but I mean well.
Yeah. No, Kate, that was great. Yes, that's to my point. There is no black and white, right? There is no, this is the way it is. This is the way it goes. In some cases, sure. Like I said, your pipes you need new plumbing.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's pretty obvious if you're an experienced investigator. You could walk in and be like, and I've had investigators tell me that they were so hyped up for something, walked in, and then they were like, okay. From their experience, they're like, I know it's this, but we'll do the investigation anyway. We'll go through everything.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you need new pipes. And that's disappointing, but it's a good thing, right? It's a good thing that you can have answers rather than most of the time you have no answer.
Yeah, we don't want to be surrounded by paranormal yes men. So the amount of historic, like very famous historic paranormal sites in the UK that I've been to in the past, and people still come forward and go, oh, my EMF reader was going crazy. It's like, of course it's going crazy. That place is a death trap. It needed rewiring 40 years ago. They've got, don't go near any of the plug sockets, you will die. So there's that. I think it's always good to be like, it should be like the first rule of paranormal is if you feel like you're haunted, get a carbon monoxide meter, because there's no shame at all in feeling like there's something in your house and then it turns out that maybe there's a leak somewhere. There's no shame in that at all. It's proactive and it's important. So I feel like that's very important. Yeah, get your gas checked, get your electric checked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, if you've got massive rats in the walls that you thought were a poltergeist, at least you know it's rats and you can do something about it. I know it's disappointing that it's not the legions of the undead, but you're going to have to call someone with a blooming big net.
Jeez, Kate, I was really looking forward to the legions of the undead. You ruined my day.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's all right, Kate. I forgive you. Anyway, so let's get into this. Today, we're going to talk about, and this isn't my list, so if you have a different list, Kate, please tell me, the top 5 most haunted graveyards in the UK. Okay?
Oh my goodness, right.
This is according to Graveyard Explorer in the UK. So whoever Graveyard Explorer is, like yourself, has explored these graveyards. I don't know if they're a doctor, but they might be. But before we get into them, tell me the big difference, Kate, between American graveyards and English graveyards, or UK, or whatever you want to say, graveyards. What do you think is the biggest difference?
Size, really. I think, well, there's so many differences, but obviously in America, you've got a lot more space to work with when building burial spaces. So in the UK, our oldest burial spaces tend to be attached to churches, cathedrals, and so they're the ones that will date back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That's before, we go into a field and find some Neolithic burials, that sort of thing. But cemeteries came about in the UK, so they're burial spaces that aren't attached to a place of worship. They came about in the late 19th century when there was a genuine need for them, because basically our small little graveyards were getting full to the brim, and in a lot of instances, a lot of churchyards were several foot higher than the building themselves, because you had all of these centuries of epidemics of all manner of things, resulting in a vast number of bodies needing to be buried. Most of our cemeteries were once built on the outskirts of cities that have since been absorbed. Certainly our grandest cemeteries have since been absorbed into major cities. And then after that, cemeteries are kind of fit in wherever we've got a little bit of land, where there was a bit of farmland that someone could snip off, from a local farmer. Whereas in American cemeteries, things seem to be so much more vast. There's a lot more space between interments. And
absolutely.
And I think we're pretty homogenized with a lot of burials nowadays because of a lot of regulations, health regulations. Very few headstones are huge, grand Victorian affairs now, because you have to think about, if this isn't maintained and it falls on someone, what'll happen? So we do look quite similar, but certainly I think space and simple things like style. A lot of styles are very distinctly American that you wouldn't necessarily see in British cemeteries, such as I don't know the exact term for it, but the sort of sloped slabs with just the big surname on them. Don't really see those as much in the UK.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think one of the biggest differences, and don't laugh at me because this is not scientific at all. One of my favorite shows was the UK show Ghost, which they turned and
Yes.
Americanized. And one of the things you guys had, and tell me if they're just making this up so I could feel dumb. They did things like plague pits, right?
Yes.
Did you have plague pits? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not silly. Oh, no, of course, yeah. I say, of course. Everyone's got a plague pit. No, this is mainly in there.
Kate goes, look at my plague pit, John. It's right downstairs. Here, take a look.
But certainly, take London, for example. London is basically built on the bodies of its earliest settlers. This is so weird because I was writing about plague pits the other day. So again, cheerful life, such a cheerful life.
Hive mind.
So beneath London, so there were two main outbreaks of plague. And when people were dying in such high frequency, there wasn't really any time or means to bury people in individual burial sites because churchyards were getting full up very, very quickly. This needed to happen quickly. So in more rural places, plague victims were generally buried on the property before they could then be reinterred somewhere else. But in places like London, you do have these mass communal pits where people were thrown in huge numbers that were then covered over, and then the next pit was dug and filled, and so on and so forth. And there are so many under London, but because they were never officially mapped during the time, we know where a lot of them are, but some are very much working on suspicion and a lot of hearsay. There's been a lot of murkiness in between. Like, take, for example, there's a plague pit that's believed to be under Aldgate tube station. So naturally, all manner of ghosts have been seen at this tube station. A lot of people in very ragged clothing. An old woman was seen crouching over a worker who'd been electrocuted at one point. So it's got this very rich paranormal history. But trying to find that exact pit, if it's behind the church that's just behind the station, if when they were digging the tube, they just went through the base of that, it's all very murky. So we don't know where a lot of them are. But for some, there have been little plaques put up and things like that. A lot of them are kind of little gardens now where you can go and sit and have a sandwich and admire the rose bushes on top of thousands of plague victims.
That's bizarre. That's totally bizarre, but I love it. See, that's how nerdy I am, too. I love that, too. Here's my biggest difference. And this has something to do with the Victorians in the United States and everything, especially in big cities. At one time, and I don't know if you've done this through your research, maybe this is the same thing, people would go on the weekends to cemeteries, typically cemeteries, graveyards to a certain point, have lunch, play around like it's a park, and just enjoy their Uncle Joe. Like, Uncle Joe was a good guy.
Yeah.
So we're going to go and everyone get dressed up and we're going to go and have a picnic and we're going to enjoy that. That, I think, was a big difference. We don't do that today, which is absolutely kind of weird that we don't do it today because we should be celebrating that. But if you did it today, people would be like, there's something going on here. The other big difference was it was more, and I don't think this is a huge difference, that we would have the person in our home for quite a while, maybe a week. So you would come downstairs, and let's use Uncle Joe again. You would have Uncle Joe's open casket, if you could, in your living room, and everyone would come in and see Uncle Joe in your house, and Uncle Joe would stay there until basically a plot opened up, money became available, whatever, and then you'd bury Uncle Joe. There was no put him on ice. No, Uncle Joe is there for everyone to see. And when you wake up in the morning and have your toast or biscuits, whatever you have, there's Uncle Joe right in the living room for you. Now, I don't know if in England that was a thing, but it was very bizarre at one time that was happening.
Yeah, it lingered far longer in rural areas. So we'd still, like in a lot of the villages around me, there would generally be a couple of women in the village who would take the deceased, lay them out, make sure they're okay. Then other people may have them in their house for the week, or it would then be transferred to the local dead house, which is more like a cool morgue in the traditional term of cool. Not, it didn't have a skateboard, and then they would then go on and bury the deceased after that. But I think the divide there, I think it's far more religious, really, because certainly in Ireland, in Catholic communities, laying out and keening and all that is such a big part of the grieving process. So a lot of Catholic families in the UK still do that. But I think when you're coming from like a more English Protestant background, your relationship with death was very, very different. And it was far more removed. I do like the immediacy of Catholic mourning rituals. But I think something else that I've found quite interesting in the difference is that in the US, it does seem that so many people are embalmed and then laid out in open casket. Whereas open casket's a real rarity nowadays in England. Certainly, it's very much a cultural thing. So I've never been to a single open casket funeral. And not to sound very ominous, like I'm offing people, but I've been to a lot of funerals. So, yeah, ultimately Irish Catholic family in the background. So there's a lot of kids, a lot of people with the chance to die.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, no, embalming always just seems like an additional, if you want it. Like, I've made sure that no one in my family was embalmed, and in my immediate family. Extended family, they can do what they want with them. But yeah, it's never really seen as a necessity, and an open casket. Even caskets, we don't really use caskets very often here. It's becoming more popular, but we're still very much a coffin country.
Yeah, and I think the other big difference is the average cost in the United States to bury a person is over $20,000. That is the average cost. Okay.
Yeah, that's crazy.
When my mom was buried and I got the bill, Kate, I was like, what? What is this? And I was mourning at the time, so you don't have argument, and you can't be like, well, no, I don't see this. You're just like,
they rely on that.
Yeah. And that to me is, the funeral industry here is a little sketchy, I would say. A little more sketchier than it should be, in my opinion. But that's a whole different podcast. But anyway, so let's get right to it. These are not in any necessary order. I'm going to start with the first one. And please comment if you researched it, you've been there, or maybe you're like, no, I haven't heard of this one. So the first one is St. Mary's Church in Whitby.
So that's the little R of, I love it there. St. Mary's features very heavily in Dracula, because it's the church on the hilltop, on the cliff top, rather.
Yes.
Yeah. So when Dracula landed in the Demeter and was wrecked in Whitby Harbour, he was said to have run up the 199 steps in the shape of a dog and went through, and then later lurked within St. Mary's churchyard. And there were said to be suicide victims there, whose graves many people have said that they've pinpointed. Yeah, so it's very much entrenched in Gothic tradition, but folkloric tradition as well.
Perhaps the most beautiful Halloween cemetery of them all, which I think is funny, lies atop of what Kate said, the 199, somebody counted them, stone stairway. Whitby's Parish Church St. Mary's was founded in 1110. That's ridiculous. Get out of here. The church's location at the top of the 199 steps means that it was quite an effort, yes, to carry a coffin up to its final resting place. Wealthy families could use a horse and carriage to go up the track parallel to the steps. Okay, so that's not too bad. If you have money, you're not going to break your back. Unfortunately, the salt and wind from the sea render most of the stones in the graveyard illegible. They look like rotten, gnarled tooth stumps sticking out of the grass. The gravestones in the churchyard are very old. The graveyards in London only date from the middle of the 1800s, and most of the stones, the legible ones, in St. Mary's graveyard date from the 17th. And Dracula. Bram Stoker's famous novel was set in Whitby. The ship Dracula was on, the Demeter? Thank you. I was headed for London. Unfortunately, it ran aground on Yorkshire. Legend has that Count Dracula, that's my Count Dracula impression. That's horrible. I'm sorry. I climbed the 199 steps of the graveyard monastery. He drank the blood of a young girl. Okay, I guess was just hanging out there. And then you weren't that young girl, were you?
It's all coming together now, isn't it?
I knew it, Kate. No wonder you look so young and refreshed and everything. I knew
Thank you. Right, I'll pay you afterwards. Thank you.
He drank the blood of this young girl. The story says the graves of the girl and the suicide victim are still in the churchyard today. They are simply marked with skulls. Bram Stoker did indeed come to Whitby in 1890 in search of a villa. He was inspired by the atmosphere of the clifftop town, and it inspired his story. Bram Stoker created Dracula. Many tourists today forget that he is not real. Okay. Sometimes you can even hear them asking where Dracula is buried. Is that true? Do people really ask you where Dracula is buried?
They do. And it became such an irritant to the people at the church, and there was a lot of church volunteers there, that they made a laminated sign that they put up on the church notice board that says, please do not ask us where Dracula's grave is. It isn't here. He does not exist. It's amazing. It's amazing. That almost feels like a sightseeing necessity in itself. Like, you've got to go and see the laminated sign.
Oh my God. Yes. I so want to do that. And just being an American, I'm going to ask that. Then I'm going to say, Kate told me to ask you that. And then they'll be like, you're not coming anymore, Kate. Get out. You'll be like, I didn't do anything. Yeah. All right. So next one, Highgate Cemetery in London. Pretty famous one, right? Highgate Cemetery has been known for both flourishing and declining periods in its long history. The cemetery now functions as a popular tourist attraction. This one I love, the Highgate Vampire. What do you know about this? Active in the 1800s, there was a guy supposedly dressed up like Dracula running around Highgate, but then people said, no, actually it was Dracula. I don't know. Don't know what to tell you on that one.
The Highgate vampire, I mean, that is a massive discussion in itself. It was basically a bout of vampire hysteria in the very early days, where two people, who I won't name, two people of very differing opinions, going on local reports, said that there was a vampire. There was a literal vampire dwelling within Highgate. And there'd been a few strange things happening around the time, so they went on with that information. And obviously the press got involved very quickly. And one was saying that he knew the true identity of the vampire and he was going to slay it. And then this was going back and forth. And ultimately, one went into Highgate, opened a tomb and, well, let's just say desecrated a body that they believed was the vampire. And they did get charged for it. Meanwhile, the hysteria was so extreme, especially around Halloween, that the police had to be called because there was a feature on a regional news programme live from outside Highgate, and people just swarmed it. People who wanted to go there, see the vampire, kill the vampire. And there are these images of, in the papers at the time, of people climbing over these massive Victorian rails of Highgate Cemetery, going to try and get a glimpse of the vampire. But it was very much 1980s, not 1880s.
Interesting. They, like you mentioned, there were people basically, bodies were mutilated by having wooden spikes driven into their chests while tombs were open, like you said. Some were decapitated. In fact, there was an incident where a man discovered a beheaded body behind his car. Okay, I don't know if you know anything about that. That's interesting, which is scary that you would go out to your car and there would be a beheaded body behind there. Also, there are a number of different ghosts along the way. In there, there's supposedly a tall man wearing a top hat that would just kind of...
That was the aforementioned vampire, I think. It was often said to have glowing eyes. Yeah.
Oh, glowing eyes. Okay. That's what I thought. And because they were mentioning some other things in here about it and how you go in there and your electronics don't work and everything. I think it's really interesting. I definitely want to check that one out. The next one is, I believe, called Binham Priory in Binham. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I think it is Binham.
Okay, great. So the Priory Church of St. Mary and the Holy Cross in Binham is classed as Binham Village Church, but the ruins in the gatehouse around the church give an ominous feeling, especially at dark. For over 400 years, Binham Priory has been a community of monks and is managed to establish almost unbroken history of scandals, many which have been unscrupulous and irresponsible, have inevitably given birth to their own legends and myths in times of ignorance and superstition. So there's a bunch of ghostly tales and folklore with this. often include a popular theme of tunnels.
But you can't, honestly, the amount of monasteries and monastic ruins, abbey ruins I've been to recently, and of course I've been to a lot because I am this sort of fun, super cool gal. You can't shift for tales of monks and tunnels. I don't know why in the public consciousness we equate monks with moles, because they are always digging, and there's always tales of some ghostly monk who was trapped in tunnels, hiding treasure in tunnels, playing a fiddle in tunnels. I think Binham, has got a spectral fiddler underground who you can sometimes hear in the tunnels late at night if the wind is right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we can't help but put religious orders into tubes in England.
Yeah, that's weird. Why do you think that is? Because, I mentioned about the fiddles and everything like that. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it's all part of there's a real certain sense of mystery, I think, that we ascribe to abbey ruins or, monastic ruins, because they're generally, certainly in the larger abbeys like Fountains Abbey or these very grand, or Kirkleys, they're huge, very dramatic Gothic places on the landscape that as a kid we inevitably, are frightened of them, want to apply our own tales to them, because they were once these very busy, very, very important seats of religious power and control, even if the monks inside were having a whale of a time and weren't necessarily being the most monastic in their activities. But they lived this very pure, wonderful life. And then when the dissolution of the monasteries came under Henry VIII, so many of them were just left to rack and ruin. Everyone was booted out. The roofs were taken off. Many of the architectural materials were then taken by landed gentry or even by farmers to go and build their own dwellings. So we're left with these weird sort of skeletonized landscapes that are perpetually existing in the past in this weird sort of in-between space of life and death. Like we can be in them, but the people that knew about them are long, long, long gone. So I think that's why we're kind of naturally drawn to adding these stories of hidden treasure and of mad monks and ghosts here and there. There's always tales of ghostly monks and nuns in scandalous love affairs. One gets bricked up in a wall, one gets executed, all of that sort of thing. It's ultimately inescapable. It's the same stories worked again and again, just with different names and different places.
That's awesome. I just love the history, and it's such rich tradition. It just is amazing. Next one, St. Nick's Graveyard in Yarmouth. Am I even close on that?
Great Yarmouth.
Great Yarmouth, yes. So this one's a little weird. Help me out with this. Maybe I didn't do this correctly, but it says it's the story of the mummy of an Egyptian princess in a casket has been passed down by locals through this time. It was given by a teacher to the Priory School, which is right next to St. Nick's and its graveyard. It is reported the conditions within the school were not ideal to preserve the mummy, and it began to decompose. The smell became so horrendous that it decided to keep the coffin and bury the mummy. The mummy was buried at night in St. Nicholas Churchyard after the burial on several occasions, and when the vicar opened the door expecting to find someone who needed his help, he found nobody there. Again, a smell started to emanate from the coffin. It was opened once again to find the mummy's arm had been left behind. The arm was reunited with the buried remains of the mummy, and the tapping ceased. So there was a mummy?
Yeah. I don't know an awful lot about it. I know that there was a real issue with a mummy being held as a bit of a curiosity during the age of, Egyptomania, the latter part of Egyptomania in the UK, that was donated to the school. And then all manner of strange things started happening. But I think it was all in the midst of a kind of revival of mummy unwrapping parties, which I think the donor thought may appeal to children, where it was very big in the Victorian era, where you'd slowly unwrap a mummy like a game of pass the parcel, and ooh and ah as each layer was revealed, So I think that was 17th century, given to a school in Great Yarmouth. So, yeah, I mean, Great Yarmouth is by the sea, so things being a bit damp and having a bit of a stench after a while.
Yeah.
Certainly figures. But yeah, I do know that there was the mummy was said to still live on, and you could hear it tapping.
Yes.
Late at night on like the inside of a coffin. So
Oof.
I don't know if the mummy is still there, but I do think it's part of Great Yarmouth folklore that if once again on the right time, the right weather conditions, you can still hear the mummy's little bony finger tapping beneath the ground in the churchyard.
Interesting. I love it. And then last one here, Greyfriars Kirkyard, Edinburgh. I think I pronounced that right.
I love Greyfriars. It's beautiful. Really beautiful.
Yeah. So this one is considered to be the most haunted in the world. Is that true?
Yeah, why not? I think the haunted history of Greyfriars is amazing. I mean, I worked in a cemetery for a while. I've visited countless cemeteries, and I can count the number of cemeteries where I've had a weird feeling on one hand. And I keep going back to Greyfriars because it is odd, but it also has one of those amazing, very murky histories. But it's also one of the few cemeteries that has a gift shop, and I own from Greyfriars, I survived the Mackenzie Poltergeist t-shirt that I wear pottering around the house, making sure that I do maintain that weird girl moniker, for the rest of my life.
I love it. So speaking of that judge, he was a merciless judge called George Mackenzie, and he presided over the Presbyterian Covenanter trials against the Protestant Presbyterians in the 1670s, is most associated with the hauntings. A petition had been filed by the Conventanters, asking for the freedom to practice their religion without interference from the king. Bloody Mackenzie. Oh, that's so great. I love it. Imprisoned 1,200 of them near Greyfriars Kirkyard to crush the rebellion against the crown. The prisoners spent over 4 months waiting for trial in a graveyard. In addition to being without shelter, they were given just 4 ounces of bread every day. Because of the inhumane conditions at the prison, it is often referred to as the world's first, this ain't good, concentration camp. Maltreatment led to the death of hundreds of prisoners and the execution of many others. Ironically, George Mackenzie was laid to rest in the Black Mausoleum at Greyfriars, adjacent to the prison. Greyfriars Churchyard is at the center of strange events involving the Mackenzie Poltergeist. Visitors are said to leave the cemetery with bruises, scratches, bites, and burns. Some have passed out or fallen ill. Most of the attacks took place near the Black Mausoleum and prison. An exorcist was called and failed twice in his attempts to exorcise good old Georgie. Interestingly, one of the exorcists died of a heart attack a week later. These attacks escalated at a point where the city of Edinburgh closed off the prison from the public, and it is still closed today. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you can't.
So he doesn't sound like
you
a cool
can't go
guy.
and wander. Yeah, you can't go and wander through the Covenanters' prison, but you can go in an organised tour, and they do take you into the little side areas and obviously put you in darkness and say, some people have been scratched and beaten, and then you just become absolutely terrified. And that's before you even get to the Mackenzie.
This waiver.
Yeah.
That's
when it comes
awesome.
to ghosts, if you were saying, I want to come to the UK and I want to do ghost tours, you should fly straight to Edinburgh. They have the best ghost tours. The best, spooky stuff. They're in York, and you'd be in heaven.
Sounds like it. So awesome. Boy, I'm getting so jealous. Anyway, before we wrap up, Kate, what did I leave off? What's your favorite graveyard?
Oh, goodness. That's like asking my favorite child, if I had any. I think my favorite is, I'm going to say I want to pick somewhere weird, but I can't think of anywhere that's particularly odd. I'll pick one of the most recent ones. I love Arnos Vale Cemetery in Bristol, and I've always thought that that's one of my absolute favourites because it's a very typical Victorian cemetery, and it's full of very, very grand memorials to the great and good. Great big tombs. It's all built up on a hillside. It's absolutely stunning. But I think, and it has diversity. You've got there's a big, one of the most famous graves in there is a big chattery, which is like a big sort of I don't even know what you describe a chattery as. Anyway, it's a memorial to Raja Ramahan Roy, who was really important Bengali polymath, religious figure. He was hugely influential. Like, he helped abolish the practice of sati, which was where widows were expected to throw themselves on their husband's funeral pyre. It was this amazing, really, it was horrific. He was this amazing campaigner, really radical, wonderful man. Like, a lot of people quite rightly revere him today. But he, like so many really important people, was welcomed into the UK, in this case welcomed into Bristol, and then they immediately caught a disease and died. So that's why he's buried in Bristol. So although I wish he hadn't died under these circumstances, he is memorialised in this huge, huge memorial. And then next to him you have like a really influential Sunday school teacher. So there's such great diversity in these things.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
I think broadly, if there's a cemetery or a churchyard that's near the sea, that's going to be my favourite. I love it. I love seaside memorials. You're going to get anchors. You're going to get all manner of really detailed epitaphs. So I'm from the seaside. I'm from a place called Cleethorpes. And if you go around the local cemetery that I used to walk around twice a week, every week, then you would see, so-and-so died far too young, but then you'd find out exactly what boat they went out on, what trawler they went out on, the name of the wreck, the date of the wreck. And I think that's when you can see that it shows you so plainly and cleanly how cemeteries aren't just places where we go and mourn, or once upon a time we went and had a picnic, but they're places of amazing social history. And we can learn so much about the space, people that lived there. I think they're just amazing places. And I think they're a great way to go and celebrate life and to go and almost to make new friends.
I agree.
I have graves of people that I've never met, would never have come in contact with in normal circumstances. Every time I walk past, I say hello. I feel like I know them. I think it's a lovely relationship to develop.
Yeah, I love it. Well, wow. That's all I have to say. I could say more, but this has been totally more than I thought it would be. And I thought really had high expectations, and you have exceeded those.
Oh, thank you. It's very kind.
Greatly. So as we wrap up here, tell my spooky friends where they can find you, again, about your books, where they can get them, and what's coming up, what they can look forward to.
Okay, you can find me all over social media. I mainly use Instagram, where I very confusingly have 2 accounts on Instagram. So my main account is All My Own Teeth, which is all one word, which is where I mix in all the personal stuff as well. But if you're just interested in graves and videos, then it's Burials and Beyond. On Facebook, I'm Burials and Beyond. Twitter, Burials and Beyond, although I don't use that so much nowadays. TikTok, I've folded and I've got one. That's Burials and Beyond. And my blog is called burialsandbeyond.com. So I'm pretty much just under that name everywhere. But if you want a gothic novel, you can get Begotten anywhere where you get your books. If you want to be easy and speedy about it, you can get it on Amazon, you can get it at Barnes & Noble, get it ordered in. And my forthcoming book, Memorials to the Dead, about unusual English graves, which would be brilliant as a present for your aging family, or maybe just for yourself, get 6 copies. That's out imminently. And again, you can get that from Amazon, you can get it from Barnes & Noble, wherever you want to get your books. And next year I have books on haunted houses and all manner of spooky stuff coming out. So do keep an eye on the joyful things that I put on the internet, because I'm pretty relentless with it.
Yes. And we are all so much better that you do it, so we can learn so much. Again, I can't say enough. Kate, if you would do me the pleasure of coming back on here sometime, I would love that, because we didn't get to castles or anything like that, and talk about that and all that crazy stuff.
We will, yeah. That sounds good. You can wind me up and I don't shut up when it comes to that sort of thing. So I
love it. I love it. Great. So again, give Kate some love. Go get her book. You won't be disappointed. Kate, as far as nightmares, she cannot say that you won't have nightmares, but she will not be held responsible for your nightmares. But, it's only a nightmare. You'll be fine. Unless it really is a ghost, and then you really should get some help.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for going overtime. Like I said, I could talk to you for hours. This has just been so wonderful. And always remember, Kate and my spooky friends, stay spooky. Thank you. Thank you, Kate. This is amazing.
Thank you.